the next few webinars that we're running are all going to focus in on the role of the guardian ad litem when appointed to childcare proceedings. We will record this webinar, so it will be able to be accessed in the future as well. So it'll be on our YouTube channel, along with our previous webinars, which we have done. So there's this existing series with Legal Aid Board, and there's a more recent webinar with around parental capacity assessment as well. And Sylvia is going to put all those links into the chat as well for people to access directly. We welcome any questions to put into the chat as well. It's quite a short webinar in that it's about 30 minutes long, but if we don't get to everything, I'm very ambitious there that there's going to be loads of questions and loads of chats or comments, but we will endeavour to get to them in our next webinar as well, which will be next Thursday. And we have platforms as well at the end for people to give us any feedback they wish or any future questions they would like to ask. And we'll put them to Claire, who is with us today. So I'm going to allow Claire to introduce herself. But Claire is a guardian ad litem and has joined us today. So I'm just going to ask Claire to give us some more insight into herself.
Yeah, I'm Claire Brogan. I am a guardian ad litem with Barnardos now for, I think it's this week actually, maybe 13 years. So 13 years this week. Yeah, time flies. Prior to that, I was social worker in Tusla. I was actually with the HSC because it wasn't Tusla at the time. And then prior to that, I was a social worker over in Edinburgh where I trained. I'm also now working a dual role. So I'm a guardian ad litem with cases, but I'm also working as practice manager within the Barnardos GAL service. So that's me.
So loads of experience, Claire.
Well, yeah, lots of experience. Yeah.
One of the questions parents are always come to us, advocacy or to their advocates, is there's been a guardian ad litem appointed assigned to their child if they're in court or that, and they're like, what does this mean? Like, who is this? Is it a real person? Is it not? You know, they have no idea initially what it means.
It's definitely a real person. So it can be huge for a parent anyway in a court arena in this country. It's adversarial, Tusla versus X. So it's a tough place to be. And then a judge is the person who appoints us as GALs. They may hear a case. It's the judge who appoints us. They may hear, they may decide not to, but they may appoint us. When a guardian is appointed, the first thing that should happen is that your solicitor advises, a parent, X has been appointed to your case, and explain what that means. And I suppose just to answer your question, what it means is that the child's voice and their best interests will be fed back to the judge by that guardian, not only verbally on the stand, if given the opportunity, but also through a report. So how do we do that? We get to know the child. So a lot of our first points of contact would be the child. So we're appointed on a day that we're not there. So you can imagine we're getting a phone call, we're being told that we've been appointed to a case, and then we try and gather as much information as we can to start our inquiries. So
are you allowed a period to, like, is there a standard, if you're appointed to a case today, are you allowed a period of 3 months to gather all that, or does that
Oh gosh, no, it's court-led, depending on, so for example, if it's an emergency care order, you are expected as a GAL to get out, interview those children, meet those children, if it's in their interest. I can come back to that in a minute, but meet those children, make inquiries with the family, meet the parents, meet the social workers, review the reports that have already been submitted, get a real sense of what's going on here, meet carers if the children are in care already, and get on with it, get in there and get on with it. If they're under an ICO, so emergency care order is ECO, you're acting immediately. If it's an interim care order, you are quite quickly, because that's a 28-day period, you've got to kind of start building relationships and formulating a report. So 28 days, you're going to get stuck in. You're going to get the information from the social work department, who are the ones who provide it to us, the names, the addresses, where are we going here. It is case dependent. Often we would recommend and ask our gals to just introduce themselves to the children, introduce themselves to the parent, at the least before a court hearing, and then start interviews. So as a parent, what you would expect is to get a call or a text to say, hey, your solicitor X has told you that I've been appointed. Are you free for a call? Or let me know when you're available for a call. So that's what you should expect when a guardian has been appointed to your child, that they would be making inquiries with TUSLA, meeting your child, and also meeting with yourselves, with the parents.
Claire, you were saying that, so the judge is obviously hearing the case and they've decided it's in the best, they're not quite sure what the child's best interests are or the child's voice is, so they've decided in the best interest of the child, a gal needs to be appointed. Is there a particular point, because you said it could be emergency, it could be interim, is there a particular point that this decision has to be made at the beginning of childcare proceedings, or could
a
case be going on a while?
Absolutely. There's some cases that could be going on for years, either under voluntary care orders where the parents have signed voluntary care and that the child is in care under a voluntary care order. That could be going on for years. The child could be in care for years and there's no gal. It could be an emergency care order and the judge would decide not to appoint a gal or would appoint a gal. Same with the interim care order. Proceedings can be going on for a while. And at some point, a judge might appoint a gal or may not. The new law that's coming in, that was passed by the President in 2022 to, I suppose, develop the role of the gal and the new service. The new law that will underpin that new guardian Litem service that will come in the next year states that in the future there should be a presumption that a gal will be appointed when a child comes into care. That's not in yet, but that's the presumption is appointment of a gal on behalf of any child who comes into the care of the state. That is, and if they do not, they have to state their reasons why. So if you do not appoint a gal in the future, you have to state your reasons why as a judge. So appointment.
Will that be for voluntary as well, Claire, or just
no? Because they're not in court. Not in
Yeah.
court. So voluntary is completely separate because it's not in court. So the only reason a voluntary order would come to the attention of the court is if TUSLA are maybe making applications for a supervision order, or well, no, actually the child's already in care in voluntary care order. So I'm just trying to think. If the grounds of the voluntary care order are at risk, so for example, if there isn't a working relationship with the parent or things have broken down, or if the placements have broken down, it's just not sustainable to remain on a voluntary care order. That's then when TUSLA may bring it into court. We can only be appointed, we can't be appointed under voluntary care, no.
Some parents would say to us, there's no gal on our case, or there's no guardian ad litem for my child, and my child is telling me one thing, maybe the social worker has a different perspective on the child's best interest, and the parent in some instances would like a gal to be appointed, and they request their solicitor to request that through court, or is there any mechanism for a parent to highlight their needs and wishes for a gal for their child?
Absolutely. I mean, it's to your solicitor, or if a parent's represent themselves, it's directly to the judge to name that and why. Yeah.
And so I know in the future there's going to be a new department where which all gals will fall under, but at the moment today, is it just Barnardos that offers guardian ad litem, or is there numerous different agencies involved, and does the judge have a list, or what's the practicality of it?
Yeah, very good. So I suppose Barnardos was the first service to set up a guardian ad litem department. So that was led by Miriam Lyon and Frida McKittrick. So they were the first service in Ireland to offer the role, I suppose, the role of a gal to childcare proceedings. Since then, guardians there's independent guardian ad litems. So people who were social workers, I guess, or psychologists, and they work independently. So they put their names on the list. So the judges would have a list, their names on the list, and they say, I'm available to work as a gal. There's also Tigala, which is another service who provide gals. And there's also a new service called Galore, and they also provide gals. So there's a number of different services. I think across the country, there's potentially around 90 to 100 guardian ad litems at the moment. Yeah, yeah. And they're all, I suppose, they all have to let the court know if they're available or not to take a case. Now, in Barnardos, we manage the list of who we would then put forward to the court. So, for example, if there's a guardian and they're extremely busy, we'd be saying to them, well, maybe you should take yourself off the list because you're going to keep getting appointed and you need to give your time to a case. But we will look at the list and we will email every week the judges across the whole country, the courts across the whole country, who is available within the Barnardos service. The other services do the same. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, because I imagine, as you described, when you're appointed, you need to go out, you need to build relationships with the child and their family, parents, and all the professionals surrounding that child. So I imagine, and obviously that interpersonal relationship piece is really key to it.
Yeah.
But I imagine it's a lot of work per case as well. So how, in that kind of an average, how many cases would a gal hold?
So at the moment, the way the system works as with the gals is that they are independent contractors with Barnardos. So they choose. They can choose.
Okay. So how much you can manage.
Yeah, exactly. Because you might have a number of cases that are very, very quiet, and then others that are taking up all of your time because they're not. They're very, very busy. We in Barnardos, though, unlike maybe other gal services, have a system of supervision and appraisal. So we would be looking at the work being carried out. So we would be monthly supervision, sometimes more. I just finished a supervision there with a gal and we needed to do more. So we're going to meet again next week. So, we're looking at, I'm saying to him, you're really busy, and another gal last week as well, I was saying, you're really busy. You need to look at whether it's the best thing for you to go on the list or not, or just to focus on your cases. So yeah, we in Barnardos have a system that would kind of keep an eye on that and make sure that people are able to do whatever they're taking on behalf of the children they're appointed to, making sure that they're not overloading themselves. But ultimately, within this current system, it is up to the practitioner. In Barnardos, we have very conscientious practitioners, so we would, be assured that people aren't just kind of dipping in and out. A lot of these cases, Niamh, as you've said, they're extremely sensitive. It's relationship based, especially with the child. It can be tough with the others, as within these proceedings. They're adversarial, as I said at the outset. They're really difficult for parents to understand and follow what's going on and what's happening for the child and where is their child. So they're really heightened. So, how do we as gals really try to get underneath that is by building relationships. And a really important part of that is with the parents, if at all possible. Sometimes it's not, and sometimes it is, depending on their circumstances.
A few questions for me, but just before I come to that question, which is a really relevant question, and loads of times our own parents are asking that as well. One of the most common things parents ask us is, when a gal has been appointed, what qualifies them to know what's in the best interest of my child?
Yeah. So their social work skills. They're an independent social worker. In many cases, I think there's maybe around 3 or 4 psychologists. So as social workers, we are trained in assessment tools with our children. So the qualification is, again, even within the new service that's coming, the qualification is social work. That is the qualification that you would need to really look at all the areas of child development, of law, of best interests, of risk, of impact of, let's say it's drug or alcohol misuse on the child, and their attachment, trauma. So that's what those who are doing GAL work are trained in as a minimum. As I said, there is some psychologists out there, and we often in Barnardos, not only we have a very tight criteria that is social work trained, but also minimum post I think it's 5 years post qualification, and we would also ask that they would have experience in the area of child protection, because it is a huge area. And somebody coming in as a, I don't know, psychiatrist or a social worker who's never worked in the area, it is an extremely difficult place to just jump into. But having an understanding, from my point of view anyway, and I can't speak for all the gals across the country, it gives me an understanding of the system that these parents are dealing with and having to, because there's a lot of issues within the system. So we're talking about those maybe difficulties that led the child to come into care. There's also systemic issues, isn't there? So, as a qualified social worker who's worked in that area, it is really important that we're now independent. We're now separate from TUSLA. It's really important, the independence part, that a parent would feel and see through their practice and their reports and their evidence and their meetings that the person is independent from TUSLA. And I guess that might very much link into your next or another question, which is, what if they're not? What if they don't? What if they're unhappy with the GAL? And I can talk to that in a minute if you want.
Yeah. Exactly. We might go to the question in the chat first. It's a specific question for where a child is under a special care order. So if for whatever reasons there's been risks identified that a high court order has been pursued that a child should receive special care, it normally starts, as the participant has said, a 3-month placement, which can be obviously extended if it meets the therapeutic intervention for children who are high risk to themselves or others in the community. And we'd like to say a very last resort as well for special care for children as well. But unfortunately, sometimes that is the best placement for the child at that time. So in those circumstances, how often would a GAL see a child in a special care placement?
Okay, so 100% appointment to children who are subject to special care orders, whether they are in special care and provided with a placement or on the special care no beds list, which has also been, I think it's down to 0 this week, first time in months.
I heard it.
Yeah. Anyway, yes. So whether you're appointed to a child, every child who's subject to a special care order has a GAL appointed to them. How often they visit that child? Minimum, I would say once a week. Minimum. There is so much to be done when a child's freedom, right to be out there is taken away for a period. So that GAL needs to be in there, meeting that child, attending every single appointment, every meeting. It's a really huge part of our role. Yeah.
Different therapeutic interventions in terms of psychologists are meeting them maybe for the first time. They have different key workers. They're getting an educational plan. Like there's different care planning pieces in place. So I would imagine it's very important for the GAL to be involved and to have oversight and all those.
They have to be. And with the parents as well. It's a huge piece. I've worked so closely with parents when their child has been, found themselves in that situation. Carers, relative carers, we work very closely together. It's a really huge disruption or part of a child's journey, sometimes we find that actually it is exactly what they've been screaming and fighting for, is just for something to change and for something to contain them and just to stop them from doing whatever is putting them at risk to themselves or others. So actually, I have found that some children have benefited hugely from that containment piece. But yeah, I do think it's a part of the role of the gal, that it needs that gal at everything. To be honest, the gal should be at everything anyway. How do you formulate what's in the best interest of a child if you're excluded from certain things or certain areas? And that's a thing that gals do come up with, believe it or not. Parents may not be aware of that, where TUSLA might want to exclude from certain meetings that they may be having internally, or with services they may be trying to bring on board, or with foster carers or fostering agencies where gals would not be maybe welcome or invited to, and that have their policies and procedures as to why. But we question that, and we would try and get in and understand why, what's going on in those meetings, and make sure we get the minutes and stuff like that. So yeah, not only in special care, but across the board, we should be.
Yeah, because I was going to just widen that out a bit. Like, we're going to talk obviously more about the role of the gal with the child, more specifically in the work that happens there in our next webinar. But I imagine for a small number of children as well that may be involved in criminality may end up in Overtown, for example, as well. And
yeah,
I suppose that gets very complicated when there's criminal procedures against a child and childcare proceedings happening as well at the same time. And just, I presume, like, the work intensifies if a child is in Overtown or in a special arrangement either.
the special arrangement being like an SEA.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they're very different, very different.
They're very different.
Yeah.
So in my
But in terms of they're like, Overtown is because the judges made an order that the child needs to be detained. And SEA is where TUSLA are using unqualified or just setups that are not at all in the best interests of the children, with staff and agencies that are I'm very concerned about. That's the SEA. Does, when the child's in Overtown or an SEA, does it up your work? Absolutely. Are you there every week? Yes, I am. If my young person is in an SEA, I am there. If they're in Overtown, of course. If they're in the children's court for a hearing, I'm there. I'm there. If I'm available to be there, I'm there with them, because they are so intimidated. They're going in, huddled up, so stressed. They're so overwhelmed at times, or put bravado on and think they know it all, and sure, they don't know who their solicitors are sometimes, or what to be asking, or how to be speaking to judges and stuff. And I do think it's really important to be there, especially if the child wants you to be there. They often do. You give me a lift in, yeah, no problems. Let's go I'll come in with you and we'll go for coffee afterwards, whatever. So yeah, supporting, but in Overtown the same as in special care, and also in an SEA, that's a whole different level of issue. Yeah.
And the final question, which we alluded to earlier, and I would think, even I spent a lot of time in children's courts myself with children, so I understand that it's a very unique experience and how intimidating it is. But I imagine it's very, for parents supporting their child in that situation as well, it's so daunting. They feel very stigmatized, very judged. They've let down their child. So even having another person there can be a real benefit to them, and especially to help them negotiate what's happening and how they access even legal aid or legal support or legal representation for their children and all that. So I'm very encouraged by gals being attending children's court with children.
Yeah.
In some circumstances, parents can become very unhappy with gals and can dispute what's in reports, which I know we're going to talk about later on, how reports are formed. And they can dispute, no, that's definitely not what my child wants, that's not in the best interest of my child, and they have a completely different perspective, which obviously they're entitled to. But as you said, these relationships can be very adversarial at the start. We hope that we work together collaboratively, that
Yeah.
that adversarial comes out. But in some circumstances, parents just can't do that, and they're very unhappy with the gal, or they question their practice, or something has happened that they have a valid complaint about it. What do they do in those circumstances?
Yeah, absolutely. And look, this is something we come across all of the time. At the first point, a parent should speak to their solicitor about any concerns they have in relation to anything that's been stated in reports, because there is a difference between the reports to the court and concerns about what's been stated and recommended, and that should be dealt with within court. Okay, so that's one point. That's where that should be dealt with. So a gal is recommending that an assessment of a child takes place, and the parent thinks there is no need for that. That is not my child that they're, describing there. That has to be and should be, and best place should be dealt with in the court. Through the solicitors or with the judge or on the stand or cross-examination, and they're instructing their solicitor to say, push that person to evidence why they're making that recommendation. The same with if a gal is reporting to the court that the child is saying, for example, I don't want to go home. I want to stay in my foster placement. The parent's like, absolutely not. That's not what they're saying to me every time I meet them at Access. The gal, again, should be questioned through solicitors, evidence, when did that happen? What was the conversation? What did the child say? What did you say? Just all within the court forum. Many parents who've been in that forum will know what I'm talking about. It's the witness box, and it's the cross-examination of anything that the parent queries. So there may be recommendations, child statements, all of that should take place in the court. Though, of course, there are outside of that issues that will come up where parents feel they're not being treated properly, or that the gal is saying things that are off the charts, or that their practice is really poor, or that they're have seen the gal act in a way that's completely inappropriate, or I'm just trying to think of lots of examples where they have, outside of the gal's report to the court, their actual recommendations, or their report, they have an issue or they are unhappy with that person. So I think in those circumstances, in Barnardos, we have our complaints and comments procedure. Okay, so it's a very tight process that if I receive a complaint from a parent, because it's viewed as a complaint, if it's a foster care, it's a comment, but we can, if you want to know about that, the procedure is online. So if a parent is unhappy about the way the gal's speaking to them, something that's happened, something they've seen, something that they're really concerned about, they can make a complaint to Barnardos under that procedure, and that procedure is on our website.
Similar organisations to Gali would have strong complaints procedures.
No idea. I definitely couldn't. Yeah,
I think they do. So I think it is about that piece, talking to your solicitor. If you had an advocate like ourselves, they would talk through with you how you make complaints as well, and support you through that as well.
100%. Yeah.
Thank you very much for your time today, Claire. And next week we're going to delve more into the work of how to form a report and what are the headings you look at, and kind of
Brilliant.
When the voice of the child maybe doesn't align with their best interests as well, kind of what that looks like and how we can relay that to parents as well. But thank you so much for your time today, and we've learned a massive amount already. But and thank you everybody for participating. Sylvia is going to share a web presentation now with a feedback form, and please give us your feedback and any questions you'd like for myself and Claire next week. and we will send out links again to everybody for same time next Thursday. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Claire.
Okay. Bye.
So, if they'd like to fill in our feedback form, that would be amazing. There's also links here to our parental advocacy service, our previous webinars as well, and just to encourage any parents with any further questions or professionals, please give us a ring or email us at we have a free phone number as well that's operational Monday to Friday, and we'd love to hear any questions that anybody has and make sure that good information as well. Keep this up for a few minutes.